She lived in the shadows of one of history's most infamous men, Adolf Hitler. But before her death, his sister revealed a secret so disturbing it changes how we see him forever. Stay with us, because her confession uncovers a hidden side of Hitler the world was never supposed to hear. Paula's 1959 interview remains the only direct testimony from someone who shared a childhood home with Adolf Hitler. Her words came slowly, measured, as if each syllable carried the weight of decades spent hiding. When she spoke about their early years together, she painted a picture that historians had never fully grasped. The monster wasn't born in political rallies or failed art schools. The seeds were planted much earlier, in something as innocent as children's games. "My brother was always the leader when we played," she recalled, her voice carrying an eerie calm. This wasn't a proud sister boasting about a confident sibling. This was an observation about power dynamics that emerged before Adolf could even articulate political ideology. While other children negotiated roles and shared control, Adolf simply commanded. His siblings didn't question him. They couldn't. There was something in his presence that made obedience feel instinctive, natural, inevitable. But Paula wasn't Adolf's only sibling, just the only one who remained close enough to witness his transformation. Their older half-siblings, Alois Jr. and Angela, had already left the household by the time Adolf's personality crystallized. Alois Jr. fled early, unable to tolerate their father's brutality, eventually moving to Ireland and later America, severing ties almost completely. Angela married and started her own family, maintaining more distance than Paula ever could. This left Paula. The Hitler household in Linz, Austria, functioned like a pressure cooker of authority and control. Their father, Alois Hitler, ruled with an iron fist, demanding absolute discipline and crushing any hint of disobedience. Paula was only 6 when he died, but his shadow stretched long across their family dynamic. The house never relaxed. Even after his death, the atmosphere remained rigid, structured around hierarchies that nobody dared challenge. Then something shifted. With Alois gone, a vacuum formed, and Adolf filled it completely. Paula noticed the transformation immediately. "My brother was different after Papa died. He got quiet, but when he said something, we all listened, even Mama." This wasn't a child grieving and acting out. This was a calculated assumption of power. Adolf didn't raise his voice or throw tantrums, he simply spoke, and everyone obeyed. Their mother, Clara, known for her gentle devotion, suddenly deferred to her teenage son as if he'd inherited more than just a vacant seat at the table. Clara had always been soft-spoken, almost submissive in her approach to family life. She'd endured Alois's temper with quiet resignation, creating a home environment where conflict was avoided at all costs. After his death, she poured all her affection and hope into Adolf, seeing in him the potential for greatness that her harsh husband had tried to beat into submission. She encouraged his artistic dreams, scraped together money for drawing supplies, and defended his decision to pursue art rather than practical work. This maternal devotion gave Adolf something dangerous, unconditional validation that would later mutate into an unshakable belief in his own infallibility. Paula watched this dynamic with the keen awareness of a younger sibling who understands she'll never receive the same attention. Clara's love for Adolf bordered on worship, and Paula accepted her secondary position without complaint. It was simply how their family— I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you a naturally curious person? If you're watching, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. This space is made for people like us. To ensure you're always part of this community and receive all our latest discoveries, you just need to do one thing: subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to stay connected with us. Okay, now that you're part of our Legion of the Curious, let's move on to the next item. At least, that was the unspoken expectation. The pattern intensified when Clara developed breast cancer. As illness consumed her, Adolf's role crystallized into something colder, more mechanical. Paula remembered the exact moment with painful clarity. It was Adolf who told me Mama was dying. He didn't cry. He took charge. He made arrangements. While most teenagers would crumble under such devastating news, Adolf operated like an emotionless administrator. He organized, directed, controlled. Grief wasn't something he expressed, it was something he managed. Paula, by contrast, was shattered. Clara wasn't just her mother, but her entire emotional world. With Adolf preparing to leave for Vienna and their older siblings long gone, Clara represented Paula's only source of warmth and connection. The illness progressed rapidly, brutally, and Paula found herself helpless, watching her mother waste away while Adolf remained disturbingly composed. He attended to practicalities, doctors, medications, household management, but never showed vulnerability. It was as if he'd decided that emotions were weaknesses he could no longer afford. After Clara's death, Paula watched her brother harden into something unrecognizable. The boy who once played games with his siblings vanished, replaced by a young man who seemed incapable of vulnerability. Emotions became weapons he refused to wield against himself. This emotional calcification would define everything that followed, a protective shell that eventually imprisoned not just Adolf, but millions. When Adolf left Linz for Vienna, chasing artistic dreams that would never materialize, Paula remained behind in their small apartment. She clung to their connection through letters, but those letters revealed a disturbing evolution. Keep the Victim rejection from the Academy of Fine Arts wasn't about his limited talent. It was about corrupt judges, cultural gatekeepers, and, increasingly, Jewish conspirators blocking his rightful success. Vienna's rejection didn't humble him, it radicalized him. His worldview compressed into a simple narrative: victim versus oppressor, genius versus saboteur, righteous suffering versus evil persecution. Paula's experience in Vienna contrasted sharply with her brother's grandiose delusions. While Adolf blamed shadowy forces for his failures, Paula worked quietly as a dormitory cleaner and secretary, sharing cramped rooms with strangers. Her surname became a burden she tried to hide, seeking anonymity in a city where being a Hitler meant unwanted attention. "My brother was proud of me," she said, pausing with visible discomfort, "until I started working for them." She never specified who "them" were, but the silence revealed everything. Paula worked at a Jewish dormitory, a fact she neither celebrated nor condemned. It was a truth she carried like contraband, knowing exposure could destroy her fragile safety. Unlike Adolf, she never joined the Nazi Party, never attended rallies, never shouted slogans. Yet when war erupted and darkness consumed Europe, she accepted the monthly payments Adolf sent. She even adopted the alias Wolf, Adolf's personal nickname, transforming herself into a ghost to survive. Her strategy was simple: silence. No scandal, no public announcement, just a quiet termination that erased her from the company as if she'd never existed. "My brother was furious," Paula remembered, her voice heavy with resignation. "He told me to disappear, to use the name Wolf, to vanish." These weren't protective words from a concerned brother. They were commands from someone who viewed family as potential liabilities requiring management. Adolf arranged financial support to keep Paula afloat, but the cost was her identity. From that moment forward, Paula Hitler ceased to exist publicly. Paula Wolf emerged, a shadow walking through a world that couldn't know her real name. Living under an alias meant Paula constantly erased herself. Every introduction was a small death. Every document signed was a reminder that her actual identity was toxic, dangerous, forbidden. The isolation deepened with each passing year, but she endured because the alternative, exposure, meant complete destruction. Decades later, in 2005, historians uncovered a stunning revelation about Paula's wartime life. Records showed she'd been engaged to Erwin Jekelius, a Nazi doctor directly involved in the euthanasia program, responsible for murdering over 4,000 people deemed unfit by the regime. The discovery sent shockwaves through historical communities. Paula Hitler, who claimed ignorance of Nazi atrocities, had been romantically involved with one of its executioners. The engagement ended abruptly under mysterious circumstances. According to documentation, Adolf intervened personally. Upon learning about the or was it pure strategy, recognizing that a sister engaged to a notorious killer would become political ammunition for his enemies? The truth likely combines all three. Adolf Hitler mastered narrative control, understanding that every association carried weight. A sister tied to Jekelius would complicate the carefully constructed image Adolf projected. This wasn't morality. This was brand management at its most ruthless. Paula's 1959 interview contained another chilling observation buried in seemingly innocent childhood memories. When we played, the others always obeyed my brother. It was instinct. He didn't even ask, they just followed. These words describe something deeply disturbing: obedience without command, submission without request. Adolf didn't need to demand loyalty. It radiated from him naturally, bending the will of those nearby through sheer presence. Paula described this phenomenon without fear or judgment, as if it was simply how things worked. But this same instinctual obedience would later scale to catastrophic proportions. Children, adults, soldiers, politicians, entire nations would follow Adolf with the same automatic submission Paula witnessed in backyard games. They obeyed because something in his nature commanded it, an invisible gravity that pulled people into orbit around his will. The horror wasn't in obvious tyranny. The horror was in how seamlessly that obedience wove itself into normal life. Paula never framed it as dangerous, because to her it was natural. This normalization is precisely what makes authoritarianism possible, when domination feels so ordinary that questioning it seems absurd. After the war, American military forces arrested Paula during their occupation of Austria. Interrogators pressed her relentlessly about Adolf, seeking insights into the man who'd plunged the world into chaos. Paula's responses painted a picture starkly disconnected from reality. She claimed she'd only seen Adolf once or twice yearly during the 1930s and 40s. She insisted Eva Braun, Hitler's longtime "My brother was not a murderer," she declared with apparent conviction. These statements revealed profound denial, a desperate psychological defense against unbearable truth. But in her private notebooks, a different story emerged. Paula remembered the beatings after their mother's death, Adolf's volatile temper unleashing violence rather than comfort. She remembered fear, pain, and the screaming that filled their home. Yet even these memories were filtered through a survival mechanism. Paula wrote that the beatings were for my own good, rationalizing cruelty as twisted care. This wasn't ignorance. This was the psychological armor required to live with the unbearable. Accepting that the brother she loved, the brother she depended on, was responsible for unimaginable horror would have shattered her completely. Denial wasn't deception. It was self-preservation. The interrogations lasted weeks, with American officers bringing Paula to various detention centers across occupied Austria. They showed her photographs, documents, testimonies from concentration camp survivors. They asked her to reconcile the man she knew with the evidence staring back from those horrifying images. Paula shut down. She retreated into vague memories, insisting she knew nothing about politics, nothing about the war's true nature, nothing about the systematic murder of millions. But her body language told a different story. Witnesses to those interrogations noted how Paula's hands trembled when But between her hesitant pauses and guarded recollections, truth emerged more powerfully than any explicit accusation could provide. She spoke of his absolute control, his simmering resentment, his unpredictable violence, his paranoid certainty. My brother was always sure he was right, even when he wasn't. Those simple words encapsulate everything. They describe a man so convinced of his own correctness that reality itself bent around his convictions. This wasn't confidence, this was pathology, a complete inability to accept contradiction, error, or alternate perspectives. It was the psychological foundation of totalitarianism, witnessed firsthand by someone who loved him. Paula's silence on many details wasn't complicity. It was the silence of someone trapped between love and horror, family loyalty and historical truth. She lived with the monster before he became monstrous, seeing the fractures before they shattered the world. And in her unwillingness to fully confront what she knew, she mirrors a broader human danger: our tendency to excuse, rationalize, and look away when evil wears a familiar face. For decades, historians dismissed Paula as an irrelevant footnote, a sibling with no real significance. But that's exactly why her story matters. She wasn't a war criminal or political collaborator. She was an ordinary person who witnessed extraordinary evil in its formative stages and couldn't bring herself to acknowledge it fully. "My brother was complicated," she once whispered to a confidant, never unpacking that complexity. She didn't need to. Every hesitation spoke volumes. After her release from American custody in 1945, Paula returned to Austria. Those funds dried up with his death, and Paula had no marketable skills, no education beyond basic literacy, no connections willing to help someone with her surname. She survived on minimal social assistance, renting a tiny room in a boarding house run by a widow who either didn't know or didn't care about Paula's identity. Neighbors who eventually learned who she was treated her with a mixture of curiosity, pity, and suspicion. Some avoided her completely, crossing the street rather than risk association. Others felt emboldened to interrogate her, demanding answers about Adolf as if she owed them explanations. Paula responded to both reactions with the same strategy: silence and withdrawal. She ventured out only for necessities, spoke to almost no one, and lived as a ghost among the living. The 1959 interview that captured her memories came about through persistent efforts by journalists who'd tracked her down. Paula initially refused, then reluctantly agreed, perhaps hoping that speaking would somehow lighten the burden she carried. It didn't. If anything, revisiting those memories seemed to age her further, drawing. Keep the voice steady and informative, with light emphasis on important facts. Use smooth pacing and make it feel like an expert guiding a tour of knowledge. These photographs showed a young Paula with her mother Clara, a teenage Adolf sketching in a notebook. The Hitler family posed stiffly before tragedy scattered them. These images, now housed in various historical archives, are among the only physical remnants of Paula's existence. Even in disappearance, Paula left clues. Her reluctant words in that 1959 interview, the subtle threads of affection she never severed, the painful complexity of loving someone who became a symbol of unspeakable evil. Her life was a quiet struggle, a silent abyss where personal loyalty collided with historical infamy. Paula embodied the tragic paradox of family and history. She wasn't just a relative of a monster, she was a person whose affection was real, whose confusion was genuine, whose pain was deep. Her love for Adolf was never simple or blindly loyal. It was layered with the anguish of watching someone beloved transform into something unrecognizable. Her story forces an uncomfortable question that transcends history and touches the core of human nature. But the world's tragedy was that too many people, in too many ways, made the same choice she did. Looking away when looking closely would have demanded action they weren't willing to take. Her final years of isolation weren't just punishment for being Hitler's sister. They were the inevitable conclusion of a life spent choosing comfort over truth, family over justice, silence over speaking when words might have mattered most. Now, I'm leaving the next step of your journey up to you. On your screen, you'll see 2 of our best videos. Choose your curiosity and click on the one that calls to you now. Well, that's it, and until next time, Curious One.